Now, listen, before anybody jumps in the comments, let me just say this first. Before we get into any of the drama, let's go ahead and get one thing straight. I don't want to hear her mouth, nobody else's mouth. Claressa Shields can fight. We know she can fight, obviously, right? But this ain't no conversation about whether she's talented because that's already been established. We're talking about a two-time Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed champion, and one of the most accomplished fighters we've ever seen, right? If we're just being honest about it. So it's not about the talent. The talent isn't the question. Here is where things get interesting because every time Clarissa's name starts trending, it seems like there is always something attached to it. A suspension controversy, social media beef, public feuds, MVP drama. And after a while, people start asking the same question. Is everybody coming for Claressa? Or is Claressa helping create some of these situations herself? Now, before y'all start typing your comments, hear me out. Because I know some of y'all are already seeing people stay hating on Claressa Shields. I mean, the few of you that exist. No judgment over here. And maybe in your world, that's true. But at some point, everybody can't be the problem. Or can they? Okay, so y'all, this is the part where I had to do just a little bit of digging because if we're gonna ask whether Clarissa is her own worst enemy, we can't just look at what happened this week. We really got to look at the whole pattern. And baby, the pattern did not just start yesterday. Okay. Look, now before we get started, I'm just asking a question. So, Clarissa fans, don't jump me yet. Okay, just hear me out. Let's start here. So, y'all remember back in February of 2025, Clarissa found herself in the headlines then after a suspicion related to a positive marijuana test. And for a lot of people, that was enough to make up their minds right then and there about it. But the story, it didn't end there. After they did an investigation, the suspension was eventually lifted and the questions were raised then about how the testing process was handled. People were saying that it was mishandled, they didn't handle it properly. It just depends, right? So, really, depending on who you ask, this was either another example of Clarissa finding herself in yet again some more controversy, or an example of people rushing to judgment before all the facts came out, right? And y'all, once the story hit the internet, those headlines started rolling in. Not Clarissa becoming the first undisputed women's heavyweight champion, not her accomplishments, not her record, none of that. The story became the marijuana suspension. And y'all already know, as we all know, the internet loves a good headline, okay? Now, here's the part a lot of people never heard about. A few weeks later, the story changed. The suspension was lifted. Investigators found an error in the testing process. And suddenly, the situation wasn't black and white as the original headlines made it seem. Which brings me to my next point, or my first point. Not every controversy attached to Clarissa is necessarily self inflicted. And honestly, this is one of my biggest issues with social media. It's like the accusation travels at lightning speed, but the correction, not so much. People will share the headline, right? But they won't always share the update. And that's important because if we're trying to just really answer whether Clarissa is her own worst enemy, we do have to look at the full picture just to be fair. You know what I'm saying? Now let's be real. This is where things started to get a little bit messier, right? Because unlike the marijuana controversy, this situation wasn't really about testing. It wasn't about testing at all. It wasn't about commission. Man, it wasn't even about a fight. This was about personalities, about social media, egos, and a whole lot of public back and forth. Now, here's where things started to get really interesting, right? Back in 2025, MVP's co-founder, Alycia Baumgardner, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, He publicly suggested that Claressa Shields could earn the biggest payday of her career. But see, there was a catch. The conversation involved her potentially dropping weight to fight Alycia Baumgardner. And honey, that's where things started to go left. Claressa didn't like that at all. Now, if you know anything about Claressa, you know she's not exactly known for keeping her opinions to herself. She wasn't feeling it. From her perspective, MVP was talking about the biggest payday of her life while putting conditions on it. She ain't like that. So Claressa's response was basically, stop using my name and cut the check. And that's when it stopped feeling like business. And then it started to feel more personal. And from that point forward, the conversation really didn't die down. What started as comments about money and potential fights, it slowly turned into like this public back and forth. They were doing interviews. There were different interviews all over the place with these podcasts, fake interviews, whatever you want to say, social media posts, subtle shots being thrown from both sides. And just depending on who you asked about the situation, the tension between the parties just kept growing and growing. And eventually, everything came to a head, honey. And eventually, things started to finally boil over, honey. And when I say they boiled over, they boiled over. I mean, they boiled over. Honey, this girl, listen. Let me just show y'all.
No way. Oh my God, is the girl gonna get in a fight here? Good, get out of the way. I want to get in there. No. World star. Not right now. I'll referee. I'm calling her to get a
Now, Claressa T-Rex Shields. Now, girl, you know better at them folks event showing out. And y'all, once the Alycia incident happened, the consequences came quickly. MVP wasted no time, honey. They put a event ban in place, banning her from all their future events. Then there was a public backlash. And honey, even a petition calling for her boxing license to be revoked. Like, these people are not playing. Now, whether you think those consequences are justified or not, it's one thing that became very clear. The argument over whether or not Claressa Shields is her own worst enemy. And honestly, sometimes yes, well, a lot of the times yes, most of the time yes, but sometimes no, because I believe it could also be the people that surround her. But they do say that she don't listen, so there's that. I think some of her controversies are self-inflicted, but I also think some people are waiting for any opportunity to criticize her as well. Now, the marijuana controversy showed us that. The MVP drama showed us something else, though. Okay? And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's more complicated than that, y'all. Now, I want to hear it from y'all. Is Claressa Shields her own worst enemy? Or do people just love coming for her every chance they get? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This is No Face, No Case, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Y'all, for real, let me know how I did. This was like my first video or whatever. So I want to know how I did. Y'all leave y'all comments and be nice. I can take constructive criticism, but sometimes y'all be going in on the people in the comments. But holler at your girl, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.